And happy Labor Day weekend. I had a minute there where I thought people who are gathered here tonight and you gathered online at the beginning of the kind of informal end of summer should get some little fun treat. So I ran to my office after the Amidah to pick up an announcement that later I will give you. An extra announcement that you will get before the rest of the community tonight. And now that I've said that, I've completely distracted everyone from this teaching that I want to give. Uh-oh. Shabbat Shalom. It's really great to see everyone tonight. I started my week by going to a tiny airport to get on a short flight on a very, very small airplane. There were 7 passengers in all, and the safety demonstration went something like this. Pretend I'm the co-pilot. Hi, everyone. There's 3 emergency exits. If we need the fire extinguisher, it's under my seat. I'll pass it back. And just keep your seatbelts on throughout the flight. Keep your seatbelts on. Not bad. It was just me in the last seat, and then all of our carry-on bags kind of thrown behind me. No bathroom, nowhere to go. And there I was. The crew had multiple tasks to do, I noticed. The same person who checked me in for my flight would also be the person who would roll out everyone's luggage to where the plane was going to come. And then when the plane landed that was going to take us and got ready to park, it was that very same person who did that mini lightsaber thing to get the plane to park where it was supposed to be. The pilots helped unload and then reload the baggage with her. And in addition to flying the plane, they also periodically moved some sun-blocking visors and things, to make sure that they could see very well, I presume, to give a better view through the little windshield. The propellers were loud, the views stunning, and more than anything, it felt intimate. Intimate to be in a space that kind of felt like about the size of a minivan. 10,000 feet in the sky with people I had never met before. And whether I liked it or not, I felt a great degree of trust for the pilot, for the co-pilot, and for the other 6 passengers. Perhaps the feeling was mutual. When I look back at this week's headlines, gun violence against children, more ICE raids, the gay men who ranked highly in the Trump administration featured on the Styles page, I feel something like closed inside a plane with a group of perfect strangers, but it's not totally clear to me whether these strangers or which strangers have my best interests. If we had to use any of those emergency exits, who would actually help me get out at the right time, and who would simply be focused on themselves? I want to feel like I'm in a country where people who have been elected and selected to lead are serving our whole society. I want our leaders to have a clear sense of justice that does not discriminate between people. And I want our leaders to have such a clear sense of what is at stake that they stand up for justice, even when it is threatened. This week's Torah portion, Shoftim, opens with a recognition that even though justice is required, justice is expected from us, it is not automatic. It is something that we have to work on. People must be tasked with adjudicating what is right, and other people must be tasked with enforcing that system of justice. What is just? Some of these expectations that we hear from Moshe come at the individual level, such as the commandment to be honest in weights and measures in commerce. Some are more about how we move through the world, Tamim tihiyeh, be wholehearted with God. Rashi says this is about living in the moment, perhaps something we could call radical acceptance, being really, really present. Shoftim also reminds us that no one is omniscient when it comes to doing the right thing. There is a recognition that sometimes we have to say, I don't know, as a leader, and turn to someone else who might actually have more information, more experience, and give us a better answer. In the case of the Torah portion, this was the priests. Finally, Moshe predicts that one day the Jewish people will want a king. Moshe is not loving this idea, but it seems that there's some kind of compromise given in this parasha to help keep this king accountable. Not only should his possessions and spouses be limited, but he must always have a Torah with him and read in the Torah all the days of his life, says this week's Torah portion, to revere God and guard everything that the Torah says. The Torah permits us to have a king, but demonstrates its reluctance in this kind of leadership by reminding us that the king has to be accountable, that there must be reverence for God, something bigger, and that when someone is no longer holding that Torah scroll and reading in it and showing that reverence for God each day of their life, maybe we shouldn't even consider them a monarch anymore. We, in a world in which we are bombarded by AI panda bears and many unreliable stories posing as news, can read so much of the parsha through the lens of truth-telling, from the seemingly small, weights and measures, right? Don't be dishonest with other people, to the large, these rules of kingship. No matter how much power or responsibility you have or you think you have, don't be dishonest with God or think that you are beyond reproach. But what about the here and now? What happens when it seems if so much of a system that is presumed to be the foundation of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness has become so corrupt, when cheating at weights and measures just seems like the tip of an iceberg, and institutions from law firms to universities obey unjust policies before they are even implemented? How do we respond when people who are tasked with upholding the Constitution attempt to limit freedom of speech and religion and normalize propaganda and straight-up lies that are designed to manipulate and divide? Often on the level of policy, we vote with our ballots, we vote with our feet. God knows some people are moving out of their states to other states right now. We find out how we can invest some of our time, some of our money into strategies that protect liberty and equality in this country. A week or so ago, Chris Armitage published an article about soft secession. He says, blue states are finally learning what red states have known all along. You don't need federal permission to govern. He lifts up the governors and the attorneys general of some 23 states who do not support the current regime in Washington and shares how this group had been convening months and months before Inauguration Day to make sure that lawsuits were ready, that states could investigate the ways in which they really shouldn't be subject to kind of federal orders, and can consider the impact, the economic impact, that states that send more money to Washington than they receive from Washington can have in this country at this moment. These tasks are not small, but for me, the article sparked some hopefulness. Protecting just laws and fighting for justice are a cornerstone of this country and the world I want to believe in. But our sages teach us something else from this Torah portion. Remember what happens if you're trying to make a just decision at a local level but aren't confident about the right thing to do? Shoftim reminds us that we don't know it all. There are priests, later rabbis, who were poring over these laws. You could ask them your hard question. And presumably back in the day, in Torah times, when we were all in this big camp of 600,000 families, traveling for 40 years, the priests might be quite accessible to you, like just walking across town. But what happens once our ancestors spread out in the land of Israel and beyond? How do you seek the legal perspective of the priests when it's more of a schlep all the way to Jerusalem? Well, you schlep all the way to Jerusalem. And the commentator Chizkuni says that this schlep is worthwhile. The way I read Chizkuni is he says it's not just worthwhile because you're bound to get a great answer from the priests, but it's worthwhile because you enter an environment where people are constantly poring over texts, arguing with each other, telling their stories, debating, where the Torah is alive. It's not just words on a page, but it is the lived experience of people over time and space. The Jewish tradition of an oral Torah that accompanies a written Torah reveals for us that the more we interact with each other, the better legal decisions can be made. I think this is like case law and then some. Whenever we tell our personal story, share our humanity, listen to someone else's story, even argue for the sake of heaven with one another, to find our shared values and a shared sense of justice, the Torah is not just words on a page, but it is living, it is breathing, it is the opportunity to not ignore something when we think it is unjust, not to ignore decisions that we hear. And there is a possibility that unjust laws, decisions, and enforcement could actually catch up to a place that is more just, because the more we share our stories and each other's stories, the less they can be ignored. In Tuesday's paper, Sean McCreesh published Donald Trump's Big Gay Government. He writes, a few years ago, a Washington journalist named James Kirchick published Secret City, The History of Gay Washington. Mr. Kirchick called the president a camp icon, adding, he's like a drag queen. He's outrageous. He's transgressive. He's catty. He's a narcissist, the likes of which we haven't seen since Alexander the Great. Sure, there are some measures of truth in that statement, but drag shows, as we know, are marked by playfulness, humor, and a good time for all. This is no drag show. This is power. These are people's lives. This is trying to make people, God forbid, invisible. This past week, we welcomed Elul, the month of introspection before the new year, the time of accounting of ourselves as we prepare to stand in judgment on the Yamim Noraim. This, year after year, is already hard work, but I want to suggest that this year the work is extra hard, because there is an extra urgency not just to do the internal work, but to externally talk about our lives more, tell our stories more, make sure we are visible, make sure other people are visible and valued. We have stories to tell. We have fights to fight and fellow travelers, more than just 7, with whom we must build trust and alignment. And maybe more than anything, we have more stories to listen to and listen to more and to retell. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah udvar Adonai miYerushalayim. May all of those ancient conversations, debate, and stories that have come forth from Jerusalem continue to inspire us to keep listening, to keep sharing, and to help others make the most just choices as well. Shabbat Shalom.